So we're coming down to the home stretch of our summer-long sermon series, By Faith, which has been taking us through the Hebrews 11 passage, which looks back at the Old Testament and looks at the heroes of faith of the Old Testament. And so I thought this morning we would try something a little bit different, because different's kind of fun. And we're back in here, which means, I don't want you to get too comfortable. So I went on the internet, and I found some examples of faith, illustrations of faith on the internet. And here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read the 3 examples, and I want you to think about which one of the 3 you would say fits your faith. Fits how you would describe your faith. Now, you only have 3 choices, so you got to listen carefully. All right? First one is this. Faith is like a bridge between where I am and where God is taking me. Pretty good. Faith is like riding a roller coaster in the dark. Or 3, faith is like a seed. If planted, it will grow. So which one of those would you say describes your faith? What I want to invite you to do is I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And for 1 minute, I want you to look to someone next to you, if you're comfortable, and share with them which one of those 3 you would say describes your faith the best and why. All right? So reminder, faith is like a bridge. Faith is like riding a roller coaster in the dark. Faith is like a seed. You have 2 minutes, go. Is this good? Is it too close? So today we're going to continue on in our sermon series, and just as Bob said, we're going to take a look today at Gideon. Now, of course, we start off in this series with our Hebrews 11 passage, and so this is what Hebrews 11 says about Gideon. And what more should I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets. Not much to go off of there. So I think if I had to use an illustration of what it is that Gideon would say his faith was like, kind of like they try to do in Hebrews 11. I love you. For those of you who are visiting, we're real formal here. Oh my God. I feel like I'm the problem that you haven't resolved yet. Oh God. Oh man. Okay. So I think it's working. How could you tell him? Fuck. Gideon, of the three illustrations, oh man. Oh, I'm going to tell that story someday at my retirement, and no one's going to believe me. So I'm preaching, and all of a sudden one of my sound guys walks up and sprays the water. Oh, man. Okay. So of the three examples, in my mind, I think Gideon would have chosen faith is like a roller coaster. And in order to understand why, I think it helps us to go back to the original passage out of Judges. So if you would do me a favor and grab your pew Bibles. I bet you thought when I started reading out of Hebrews you were going to get out of it today, didn't you? So we're going to turn to page 194 in the pew Bibles. And we're going to read several passages today about Gideon and about Gideon's life and his faith and his story. And we're going to start with the call of Gideon, which is found at the bottom of the left-hand column on page 194. So we're going to start with Judges 6, 11 through 18. And hopefully this will give us a feel for why it is that Gideon would say that his faith was like a roller coaster. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abzerite, as his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior." Gideon answered him, "But sir, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all these wonderful deeds that our ancestors recounted to us, saying, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has cast us off and given us into the hands of Midian." Then the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. I hereby commission you." He responded, "But sir, how can I deliver Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord said to him, "But I will be with you, and you shall strike down the Midianites, every one of them." Then he said to him, "If now I have found favor with you, then show me a sign that it is you who speak with me. Do not depart from here until I come to you, and bring out my present, and set it before you." And he said, "I will return, or I will stay until you return." So in order to understand a little bit about Gideon and about what's going on here, you need to understand two different things about what's going on during this time period. And the first thing is, Gideon lives during a time when there's a group of Bedouins who have this bad habit of coming in and into the territory that Gideon and his family and all of the Israelites live in. And they descend upon them, they take anything and everything that they want, anything of value, and they leave as fast as they come. And so the Midianites are known for doing this, and you can kind of get a feel from it from this passage that everybody's kind of living on edge because of it, right? Can you imagine not knowing when someone was going to come in and take your stuff? And that had become a habit. And so we find Gideon in this passage in a wine press, which is basically a huge hole in the ground, threshing wheat, which was usually done out in the open. Because what happened was, when you were threshing wheat, you wanted the wind to come and take the light pieces of the outside of it away, so that the seed kernels would fall to the ground. Doing that in a hole is not a smart idea. But he was so afraid of the Midianites that that's where he was doing it. So that gives us kind of a feel for he and all of the people like him are sitting around and are really anxious about all that's going on. The other important thing that kind of connects with this, we find in this passage, that's important for us to realize, is that the Israelites are worshiping not just God, but at this time they're also worshiping the Canaanite god Baal. Now this is important, and we find this in this passage where basically Gideon says what? He says, well, if God's so awesome, If God's going to come and do this, why is all of this happening? Why are the Midianites coming in and they're constantly taking our stuff? You say God is with us, and I say that's not true. Well, in order to understand that, let's go back for a minute. And the promise to Abraham says what? Abraham's promise says, I will be your God and you will be my people if what? If you worship God alone. What are they doing? They're worshiping God and Baal. And so God's promise that says, I will protect you and I will be your God and you will be my people is void at this point. Now we have an awesome God. God never leaves us to our own devices. We may be at a point where we say, I'm good without you. But God is constantly pursuing us. And so God has made a promise to his people and he wants his people back. And he is going to do what it takes to make that happen. And he is going to use Gideon in order to make that happen. He wants to get rid of the Midianites and he wants to show his people that he is God. And Gideon's response probably sounds a lot like, for those of us who heard a couple weeks ago, the story of Moses, right? Gideon goes, whoa, 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 buddy. You have got the wrong guy. There are 13 tribes in Israel. Okay? Manasseh, small tribe. There are other tribes, God. There are really, really good tribes. There are tribes that have natural leaders in them. Manasseh's not one of them. And then there's me, Gideon says. I'm not the oldest in my family. I'm not the one who everyone's going to listen to. Gideon's point is a really good point. He doesn't have the kind of authority in his family to stand up and go in front of all of the 12 clans, 13 clans, and say, hey, everybody, God has said this. Everyone's going to go, who are you? Who are you to try to lead us? It makes a really good point. But that's God's point. God's point is, at the end of the day, I want everyone to know that it's me who delivered my people from the Midianites. And if I pick the big strong guy in your family, you're going to think it's him. And if I pick somebody from one of those clans that's a natural leader, they're going to think it's him. I'm going to pick you, Gideon, and it's because you're someone no one would ever expect. So the question is that enough? Well, at first we believe that is the case. What's the very next thing Gideon does? He goes and he worships God. But then in verse 36 through 40, we find this. This is a pretty famous story. Then Gideon said to God, it's under the heading, the sign of the fleece. That's really annoying. Then Gideon said to God, in order to see whether you will deliver Israel by my hand, as you have said, I'm going to lay a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it's dry all around the ground, then I shall know that you will deliver Israel by my hand, as you have said. And it was so. When he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl with water. Then Gideon said to God, do not let your anger burn against me. Let me speak one more time. Let me please make a trial with the one fleece just once more. Let it be dry only on the fleece, and on the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night. It was dry on the fleece only, and on the ground there was dew. So what happened? It's 10 verses. Within 10 verses, Gideon goes from, you're right. If you go with me, God, I will go anywhere for you. I will worship you to, could you just let me know for sure. Now this makes sense, okay? During the time period, if you were going to do something as big and impressive as go up against a group of people like the Midianites, you wanted to make sure that you had God on your side, right? Right? Okay. It's a little warm in here. I want to make sure you're still with me. So, it makes sense that Gideon would go, I need a test, God. But here's the problem. God has already told him once, right? He appeared to him. He went face to face. This was not a question. He was literally face to face with God. God said, I want you. That doesn't really leave a ton of wiggle room for the whole idea of, are you sure? But Gideon found the wiggle room and asked again. Twice. Gideon has now asked 3 different times. And he has heard yes every single time. So is that going to be enough to get him through the battle? Let's go ahead and continue reading chapter 7, verses 1 through 7. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the troops that were with him rose early and encamped beside the spring of Harod. And the camp of Midian was north of them, below the hill of Moriah, in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, the troops with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into your hand. Israel would only take credit away from me, saying, my own hand has delivered me. Now, therefore, proclaim this in the hearing of the troops. Whoever is fearful and trembling, let him go home. Thus Gideon sifted them out. 22,000 returned, and 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said to Gideon, the troops are still too many. Take them down to the water, and I will sift them out for you there. When I say this one shall go with you, he shall go with you. And when I say this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So he brought up the troops down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, all those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps, you shall put to one side. All those who kneel down to drink, putting their hands to their mouths, you shall put to the other side. The number of those that lapped was 300. And all the rest of the troops knelt down to drink water. Then the Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 that lapped, I will deliver you and give the Midianites into your hand. Let all the others go to their homes. Now let's just think about this for a minute. Gideon starts with 32,000 men. Sounds not bad, right? The problem is, historians believe that the Midianites had 135,000 men. Now, I am not a mathematician, and I'm not good at math. But I'm pretty sure that the ratio of 32,000 to 135,000 is a little skewed. And here's awesomeness of our God. God goes, there's too many people. And he whittles it down to 300. Now, if you saw the movie 300, then you get the image of the Spartans, right? And you think to yourself, I saw that movie, I know how this ends. I don't want you to think 300 big, tough Spartans. It's not your kind of Spartan, and I apologize for that, Louise. Which are super close to the kind that Gerard Butler had. I'm just putting it out there. These are 300 kind of regular Joes, right? Up against 135,000 men. And what did you notice about this passage? Did you notice? Did Gideon say a word about it? No. 300 men. And Gideon doesn't say a word. But here's what's awesome about our God. Keep reading with me. We're going to start in verse 9. That same night, the Lord said to him, get up, attack the camp, for I have given it into your hand. But if you fear attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah, and you shall hear what they say, and afterwards your hand shall be strengthened to attack the camp. Now, just a minute here. Think about this. God just said to Gideon, if you're still having trouble with this. Now, have you ever gotten involved with somebody who has that conversation about the doubting Thomas? Right? And there are just some people that it's like, if you doubt, it's not a good thing. And we're not supposed to doubt. Now, I don't know about you, but I believed that for a long time. I believed that you weren't supposed to be that kind of a doubter, that you weren't supposed to have that kind of a faith. And here we are in this passage, and God doesn't look at Gideon and go, dude, seriously. He goes, Gideon, I just want to know, are you okay with this, or do you need evidence again? Now, that's not the God that looks at you and goes, seriously? Are you serious right now? And I don't know about you, but that for some reason is the image that I got of God. That when you ask questions, God goes, how many more times do I have to talk to you? How many more ways do I have to say this to you? And that's not what we find here, is it? God going, Gideon, come here. Do you need me to tell you again? Because I am happy to do that. So do you think he's going to take him up on his offer? Then he went down to his servant Purah, to the outposts of the armed men that went to the camp. The Midianites and the Amalekites and all the people of the east lay among the valley as thick as locusts, and their camels were without number, countless as the sand on the seashore. When Gideon arrived, there was a man telling a dream to his comrade, and he said, I had a dream, and in it a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian and came to the tent and struck it so that it fell and turned upside down, and then it collapsed. Sounds like when I try to bake bread. And his comrade answered, this is none other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the man of Israel. Into his hand God has given Midian and all his army. When Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he worshipped. And he returned to the camp of Israel and said, get up, for the Lord has given the army of Midian into your hand. I love this story. I love this story because for me, it taught me a lesson that I needed to learn. I love Gideon's story because Gideon goes from I can't to woohoo, to I can't, to woohoo, to I can't, to woohoo. So do you understand why it is that at the beginning I said, I think if Gideon was sitting here, he would have looked at you and he would have said, oh man, seriously, the whole roller coaster thing. Because Gideon had this faith that wasn't like a seed, that you plant it, and for me, okay, unless you're me, it grows straight up. And supposedly it's just supposed to keep growing. But if you haven't learned yet, I have 2 black thumbs, and I kill everything. Gideon might have said it was like a bridge, but the problem is Gideon started across the bridge and he kept running back. No, Gideon, I think, would have said, no, seriously, let me tell you, my faith is like a roller coaster. It has ups and downs and turns. And there are times that I'm scared and I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get off, and I wonder if I can handle this. And here's why I love that. I'm going to get a little real with you because, let's be honest, after that whole thing there with it's obvious that we're super. So is it okay if I'm a little real with you for a second? Here's my deal. I have lived a majority of my life believing that there was something wrong with me because I didn't have faith like a seed. That somehow it was planted. I was baptized at the age of 9. And something was wrong with me because I didn't have that faith that was planted, and I went to church and I did all that stuff that you were supposed to do, and it was supposed to just grow straight up. And mine didn't. I have had periods of my life where I never doubted the presence of God, but I didn't necessarily want to follow, and I wondered whether or not God was a big fan of me, and I've had those doubts and those concerns and those questions. And I thought to myself, there's something wrong with me because I somehow got this thought that I was supposed to plant the seed and it was going to grow and it was going to be amazing. And my faith is like a roller coaster. It's had ups and downs. I was 30 years old before I had someone look at me and say to me, show me a cycle of faith. And in that cycle of faith, I saw doubt. And I looked at the teacher and I said, wait, you're telling me that part of my faith is having a period of doubt? Yeah. You mean having concerns and questions and not knowing if I can believe or not? That's part of faith? Yeah. You mean there's nothing wrong with me for questioning? I can't tell you the experience that I had of being given permission for the first time in my life to be able to say, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you for doubting or having questions. And I think about that, and I think about Gideon's story, and I think about we've gone through all of these examples of faith. And I wonder whether or not somewhere along the lines you've sat there and you've thought to yourself, but I have this faith that isn't like that. Maybe you're in that down part of the roller coaster and you're like, Now, I've said it before, that there are some people who have a gift of faith. And if you're one of those people who have a gift of faith here today, you're going to be sitting here and you're going to go, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have never questioned. That's a gift from God. And it's beautiful, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there may be someone sitting next to you today who is going, oh God, thank you. Because I remember that feeling. My question is this. What makes it that someone can go 30 years in the church and not hear that that's okay? I have to wonder if part of it is that as a people in the church, the Big C church, we don't always give one another permission to be real and to say, quite frankly, I'm doubting. We have this goal of living into being a place, being FBC, where relationships with God and neighbors grow. And part of growing with God is having doubt, but I wonder if part of growing with neighbor is being the kind of place where we're willing to look at one another and go, and I'm struggling. So my question for you this morning is this. What would it take for First Baptist to be a place where you could honestly come in and share where you're really at? Now, I know some of you, and some of you are sitting here and you're thinking, I think that's already the case. And my question is, so how do we grow that? What is it that comes to your mind when you say, I think it's the case because, and how do we grow on that? Why do you feel safe coming in and sharing where you're at here? But if you're sitting here today and you're thinking to yourself, heck no, then I wonder what it would take. What would it take to feel safe enough to look at another person and say, I gotta tell you, I have doubts. All of this is what it means to be a people of faith. And I believe that we are fully capable of being that church and that people. And so I want to invite you this morning to think about that. What is it that you take away today? Is it that I'm okay? Is it that if we did this, I think I could feel safe? Is it that I know what it is? I know what it is because I feel that way at First Baptist, and it makes me super excited, and you want to lead the way and say, yes, this is it. Let me tell you what it is that makes this a safe place for me. We can be the people that God are calling us to be. I believe it. I know it. And it takes asking these kind of hard questions and being honest with one another. Will we do it? Let's pray. Dear God, I thank you. I thank you so much for this beautiful day and for the incredible story of Gideon that reminds us, that tells us, that shows us firsthand that no matter what kind of a faith we have, whether it's the one that moves forward without question, or the one that struggles and doubts, Lord, you meet us right where we're at. Lord, as we seek to be the church that you are calling us to be and the people that you're calling us to be, we ask for your hand to be upon us and give us wisdom as to how we can better move into that. Lord, how do we do what we're already doing more? How do we be challenged to grow in ways that allow that to be possible? Lord, how do we give ourselves permission to doubt? Lord, may you move in us and answer those questions and lead us to be the individuals in the church that you've called us to be. We ask these things in your most precious name. Amen.